If you had to choose the most fun category from the vast world of motorbikes, what would your answer be? A sports bike, a cruiser, or an activity? If it were up to me, I'd choose a street bike. It's great for getting around town, can be modified to carve corners, go on road trips, and even pull off stunts with ease. Compared to the popular sports bikes and cruisers of today, it might not have a flashy appearance or a friendly seat height. But if you're like me, just an average rider not looking for extreme performance or the fastest lap times, then a street bike is your best choice for maximum fun at the lowest cost. It's a shame, domestically produced motorbikes have developed rapidly with more categories and styles, that the street bike segment hasn't grown much. Especially for large capacity street bikes. You can count the decent ones on one hand. It's been a very long time since our channel featured a street bike. We understand the reasons for this. In the current motorbike market, constantly attracting new riders, products like cruisers and sports bikes better satisfy their need to express individuality. In this respect, many street bikes likely turn fewer heads than a cub. When CFMOTO launched the 675NK this March, I was intrigued. I couldn't test it then due to a leg injury. My leg is healed, and I've bought the bike. Today, let's see if this E-version, 3-cylinder, large-capacity street bike can surprise the formulaic domestic market. The 675NK isn't a new bike. It's a stripped-down version of the 675SR, sharing the same platform. The two bikes are similar in frame and engine performance, with the biggest difference likely being the price. The official price of this bike is $35,980, with some launch offers. This price difference is unusual. I'm guessing various indirect price reduction strategies for the SR are already on their way. Get ready. As a later model, the NK has improved issues from the original 675SR, such as throttle smoothness and suspension consistency. However, not all problems are resolved, and we'll analyze these individually later. We'll also briefly discuss choosing between it and another large-capacity street bike from CFMOTO, the 800NK, with similar power figures. Right, let's start with the looks. When it comes to the bike's appearance, there are two ways to look at it. From my aesthetic point of view, I'd give it a high score. It has a beauty that feels like reuniting with an old friend. What do I mean by that? As manufacturers' industrial design and lightweighting technologies advance, new large-capacity street bikes are becoming more compact, smaller and smaller. So small you can't even tell they're large-capacity bikes. I'm specifically talking about the Ducati 950 and their 800NK, both of which look lean and slender. This isn't a bad thing, it's for performance reasons, but it makes the understated appearance of street bikes even less imposing. Riding one can feel a bit like riding a dog. The 675NK's appearance has that long-lost sense of large-capacity bulk. The full engine, the bulging fuel tank, it perfectly matches the image of a big bike I yearned for when I first started riding. It just looks mean. Now, putting personal nostalgia aside, you couldn't say it's exceptionally beautiful. It's more like a Honda that's gone back to basics. There are no standout design features, and some parts, like the engine area, look like they were done quite casually. But its strength lies in its well-proportioned design. It's muscular without being bloated, and there are unnecessary embellishments. It looks simple and timeless. Given its relatively low price, I think there's little to complain about. Of course, aesthetics are subjective, so you can judge for yourselves from the video footage. This bike's craftsmanship and detail are a slight step back from previous CFMOTO products, mainly in materials and finish. The rear foot pegs and side plates are like those on entry-level 250cc or 400cc bikes, and even among those, they're the cheaper kind. They're different from the ones on the 675. These are acceptable. The pricing strategy is lower than before, so it's understandable to cut corners where it doesn't significantly affect functionality. The only thing that really bothers me is the screws. The quality of the screws on the entire bike is quite low, especially to secure the seats. They're rubbish. And because they're at an awkward angle, it's very easy to strip them when you're working on them. So I recommend replacing them as soon as you get the bike. Otherwise, if your battery dies later on and you can't get the seat off, it'll be very awkward. I suggest not tightening them too much when you put them back. Otherwise, after taking it on and off a few times, you might strip them completely, and then you'll never remove the seat again. This is my first time undoing it. The equipment and components are decent, while the bike has regressed in some areas. Overall, it's at a good level for its class. The 675NK shares features with the 675R, including a full-color dash, tire pressure monitoring, auto quickshifter, and adjustable traction control. The three main components have identical specs. It's not fully loaded for its class, but it is. However, in terms of real-world user experience, while most of its performance is fine, it makes two small but unforgivable mistakes that made our opinion of it plummet. The first is the dash. This bike uses the same full coated dash as the 675R. The user interface, display quality, and information meet CFMOTO's excellent standard. The annoying part is one of its minor features, the tire pressure monitoring system. This TPMS is more of a hindrance than a help. Firstly, every time you start the bike, it doesn't show current data, only the data from before you last switched it off. It calibrates after you start riding. This has led to us, on more than one occasion, riding out with the bike warmed up, only to sheepishly return to inflate the When I set off, the display showed everything was fine, but after crossing one junction, it gave me a warning. Secondly, even after calibration, the data isn't accurate. For example, the dash sometimes shows the rear tire at 2.7, but when measured, it's only around 2.3. Even after inflating to 2.5, the display still shows 2.7. I can't figure you out. When you ride this bike, carry a pump. To protect yourself from its deception, and because if you plan on spirited riding in the twisties, it is a sport naked. After all, you should rely on the pump's reading. During aggressive riding, even a difference of a few tenths in tire pressure can hugely affect the bike's dynamics. More than the tire pressure, I want to complain about the steering damper below the dash. I didn't expect its main function to be psychological comfort. Although it claims 24 levels of adjustment, there's almost no difference between the highest and first settings. Yeah, fact to say, even if the damping fluids aren't getting up, I'd think it was just decoration. This was on the first setting. I can move it easily with one hand. And this is with load from the ground. Okay, up to the max setting now. Let's see. The resistance has increased slightly. And I truly mean slightly. Besides the louder sound of the damping fluid moving, the handlebars remain very agile. No matter how you adjust it, the bike's steering always feels light and unstable. And as you probably know, CFMOTO added this steering damper because of the previous controversy over the 600's death wobble. Logically, with such a major issue, you either make no statement and insist there's no problem, or you offer a sincere apology and genuinely fix it. The worst thing is to fob people off with a token gesture. It's like they want to show they're doing something but aren't willing to put in real effort. For a major manufacturer to be so ambiguous shows a lack of... Even without this history, the damper's performance deserves a thumbs down. Our attitude is better to have nothing than something shoddy. We can accept if you don't include it, but not being fobbed off. Do you? Every night I make it up to you. Next, let's discuss the heart and soul of this bike engine. It's equipped with a liquid-cooled 675cc inline. It's the same one found in their 675SR. I think large-capacity 3-cylinder engines are perfect for street bikes because their blend of high rev power and low-end torque matches the varied usage scenarios of a street. But that's if the manufacturer's tuning is up to scratch. So how has CFMOTO tuned this engine? Personally, I think it's average. It's not that there's anything wrong with it, but the experience doesn't feel much like a triple. In fact, in many ways, it's very similar to the experience of Honda's 4-cylinder CB650. Firstly, regarding power delivery, it has a high revving character, which I wasn't expecting. This kind of tuning isn't really suitable for a street bike. Its main benefit is that it looks impressive on the spec sheet. It produces its peak power of 70 kilowatts at 11,000 RPM, like the SR, close to the 800NK. We clocked at 100 km per hour time at 3.6 seconds, with a top speed of 210 km per hour. For a street bike of this displacement, that's impressive, especially since it has no fairing and is quite wide. This also means its low to mid-range performance lacks the smoothness and explosive power expected from a triple. It's smooth enough, but not much fun. The second point is that the power delivery feel is similar to the Honda. Of course, I have to give it some special praise here. Below 6,000 RPM, the throttle is very smooth and vibrations are well controlled. The snatchy feeling on small throttle openings, a major headache for most domestic bikes, including the ZZ 500R from our last episode, and their 675 has been optimized to be unnoticeable. In terms of throttle usability and smoothness for daily riding, the 675NK is undoubtedly the easiest to handle among domestic large-capacity street bikes in its class. And it's a big but, like the Honda, once you go past 6,000 RPM, the refinement drops off because vibrations increase, the engine note becomes harsh, and it sounds like it's screaming its lungs out. Although it's still within an acceptable range overall, the contrast between the low and high revs is so significant that it instinctively makes me not want to rev it out. We previously described the CB650 as the four-cylinder that least entices you to twist the throttle. This bike is likely the three-cylinder equivalent. And that's what I think is the biggest shame about this engine. Its fundamentals are fine, but there's a contradiction between its tuning direction and its actual performance. It's a high-revving engine, but the high-rev experience isn't good enough. Furthermore, during aggressive riding, its clutch and gearbox performance also have some issues. The clutch lever feels light, but the feedback is average. The engagement and disengagement points are unclear, making it difficult to find and hold a good biting point during a launch start. The gear changes also have issues, similar to the old 450 SR. The shift from first to second and second to third isn't smooth. There's a sort of lurching. If you're shifting at the absolute limit, the rear wheel can even break traction, like a clunky clutch dump. And the gear shift doesn't feel crisp and clean. The situation is the same even if you use the quick shifter. Of course, in daily riding, these minor flaws are less noticeable. Finally, onto fuel consumption. The bike has a 15-liter tank. We used 3 tanks of fuel, mostly on long-distance journeys with different riders and styles. At the trip start, everyone was enthusiastic and riding hard, so fuel consumption was high at 6.08 liters per 100 kilometers, with the fuel light on. After calming down, we achieved 5.4 miles per 100 kilometers, with the Finally, when the excitement wore off and we got tired, cruising gave us 4.6 liters at 100 kilometers, with the light on at 204. Note that this is calculated based on GPS data. If you go by the bike's odometer, there's a 4% optimism factor, so the figure would be slightly lower. Nothing special about this performance. It's consistent with its power output, neither high nor low. The only complaint is the remaining range function on the dash, which isn't very reliable. Because even when our riding conditions were very consistent on this trip, just making miles, it would often show the range not decreasing at all, and then suddenly drop by a large chunk. The most annoying thing is when you're about to run out of fuel, it might show 20 or 30 kilometers of range left, then suddenly drops to zero without warning.
It just suddenly drops to zero for no reason every single time. I think that's quite dangerous. If it dropped from 5 kilometers to zero, that would be understandable, but when it suddenly drops from 20 or even more than 20 kilometers straight to zero, it catches you off guard. I could have been on the motorway.
Fortunately, the fuel warning light logic is conservative, activating with over 2 liters left, so it's unlikely to leave you stranded. But as we always say with features, it's better to have nothing than something shoddy. Aside from the engine, the handling experience is also somewhat similar to the Honda 650. Both have a degree of sportiness, but for large capacity bikes, they lean towards being user-friendly and easy to ride. First, let's discuss how easy it is to get on with. The official specs are a seat height 810mm and a width 100. However, we weighed it and found its curb weight with 80% fuel is 199.5 kilograms. I knew CFMOTO might do this, but I still held out hope. If CFMOTO could make a bike of this displacement weigh 189 kilograms, it would be remarkable. This 199.5 kilograms figure, while a bit dishonest, isn't bad. In practice, the pressure of pushing and riding the bike is normal, or slightly on the lighter side for this displacement class. The riding position isn't as aggressive as hardcore street fighters. The handlebars are high, the seat is flat and firm. There's little pressure on your back, hands, or backside. It handles short trips of 300 or 400 kilometers well. The 675NK scores highly in frame and handling among domestic platforms. However, it still has a neutral character. It's an easy-to-ride, all-rounder without distinct characteristics. So whether for daily commuting or carving corners, it provides a good, standard street bike feel. The only somewhat unique characteristic is its steering feel. The steering on this bike has the typical CFMOTO headless feel. This might make you think it's a very agile bike when you first ride it, but that feeling is limited to low speeds. Once you pick up the pace, it disappears. This headless style means that when pushing the bike to its limits, the overall integrity feels lacking. Whether braking into a corner, accelerating out, or holding your line mid-corner, extra attention is needed to manage and stabilize the front end. It requires a lot of concentration. Add to that the useless damper, and you'll understand why most of our team didn't like the front end feel. Only one esteemed kit owner said, feels familiar." As for the suspension, the bike comes with a fully adjustable front and rear setup from KYB. The factory setting is a compromise, but not a very good one. In normal riding, it's uncomfortable, harsh over bumps and potholes. But when pushed, it feels soft and wallowy. As mentioned in episode 520, we experienced the bike getting unsettled and twisting several times. So, after you get it, make adjustments based on your needs. Speaking of adjustments, I must complain again. The front and rear suspension is fully adjustable, yet the only tool provided is an Allen key. I checked under the seat where the 450's toolkit was, and it's empty too. For a bike costing $35,000, they're not giving away a penny. I recommend buying a set of adjustment tools to carry with you. With patience to dial it in, the bike's riding experience can reach the next level. We'll discuss that in detail another day. We haven't done it yet. There's not much to say about the brakes and tires. They're the same as the SRs, with CS-3N tires, 120 at the front and 180 at the rear. The grip is great in the current season. The brakes are a familiar setup, J1 radial calipers with 300mm twin discs at the front. The discs are slightly smaller than those on the 800NK. The only thing worth mentioning is that the usual J1 issue of the brakes needing to build up pressure, where there's no response at first and then they suddenly bite hard, is gone on this bike. So, the 675NK's overall riding feel should have been that of a well-balanced, no weaknesses all-rounder, but due to some shortcomings in the fine-tuning, like the high rev refinement, gear shift feel, and the front-end integrity, the bike is a bit less fun when ridden aggressively. It's a shame, because I think it could be better if tuned properly. In its current state, it's still a good bike. It handles daily commuting, road trips, and twisty roads without issues. Compared to the previous SR, it's more balanced, easier to ride, and smoother. It's ideal as a first step into large capacity bikes for riders moving up from the middleweight class.
You'd rather be.
For the final part of the video, let's address choosing between the CFMOTO 675NK and 800NK. Both bikes have similar power figures, one with 95.2 horsepower, the other 106, both are from CFMOTO and are sportbikes. The choice between these two bikes comes down to four main aspects. First, the price. The 675NK is $35,980 and the 800NK is $42,000. Secondly, their looks are completely different. The 675NK has the muscular, bulging appearance of a standard large-capacity street bike, but its design is somewhat plain, and the finish feels like that of a mass-market bike, lacking a premium touch. The 800NK's appearance prioritizes functionality, compactness, and lightweight. It lacks the presence of a large-capacity bike and has a lean, sharp look. However, as CFMOTO's flagship street bike, its craftsmanship and materials are superior. The third point is power. Both bikes have around 100 horsepower, but the 800NK's power is poised and ready. As soon as you want it, it's there instantly, like a bomb going off. With the 675NK, you must rev up and actively use the throttle to approach the 800NK's power experience. The difference between them is like one is sound effect, and the other is sound effect. The final point is that although both bikes are in the sport naked category, the 800NK offers a significantly better sporty riding experience. Its character is also more distinct. Everything from the engine tuning, close ratio gearbox, and lightweight design is aimed at one unwavering goal: to go for it. Riding this bike, you feel it's egging you on. You'll find yourself riding faster and leaning lower. And then you sell the bike. The 675NK is a neutral all-rounder, suitable for daily use and twisties, but it doesn't excel in any area. The fun it offers is for the owner to discover. Though these two bikes are similar in power and positioning, their capabilities and target audiences differ completely. If the 675NK is your first step into large capacity bikes, then the 800NK could be your next, once you've figured out what you want. Alright, that's all for this review of the 675NK. If you liked our show, please give us a like and add it to your favorite. You can please remember to long press the like button. We've got to go and catch up on our schedule now. Bye bye.
Yeah.